Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
استهدفت غارة في غزة اليوم سيارة أحد قادة لجان المقاومة الشعبية.
A raid in Gaza targeted a car of one of the leaders of the Popular Front resistance group, destroying it completely and killing Abu Yusuf al-Koka, the general leader of the Al-Nasr Salahuddin brigades and the head of its resistance committee. He was heading to the Friday prayers. Eyewitnesses said that at least one missile hit the car as it was traveling on the liberated Jerusalem University Street in the Nasr neighborhood in Gaza City. Abu Abir, the spokesman for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, accused Palestinian security agencies for being involved in the assassination of al-Koka. Abu Abir said that in a meeting last night before his assassination, al-Koka revealed that he is being targeted by Israel and that Palestinian security agencies, in his view, were involved. Abu Abir promised to reveal the name of the Palestinian agency as well as promising to take revenge.
The general leader of the Nasr Salahuddin brigades was murdered when he was going to the Friday prayers. A Subaru car stopped by the side of the road and exploded at the hands of a heinous collaborator. Our general leader has gone to his companion, who is the highest companion to all of us, our dear God Almighty. We, the Nasr Salahuddin brigades, see that this cowardly act has increased the level of danger. We hold the Zionist enemy primarily responsible for this act. We say that this is a clear message to the Nasr Salahuddin brigades, and we understand it. The enemy must prepare his own coffin, and the entire Zionist entity must be prepared to receive a message from our fighters.
ولكن على العدو أن يجهز أكفانه ويجهز كافة بلاد الكيان الصهيوني لاستقبال رسائل مجاهدينا.
وكانت طائرات حربية إسرائيلية قد شنت.
Israeli warplanes carried out an air raid on the Gaza Strip early this morning, bombing a road and a bridge they believe Palestinian activists are using to fire missiles on Israel. A source from Hamas said that Israeli planes fired missiles at an empty training camp in the center of the Strip. Palestinian emergency agencies indicated that the air raid that targeted the bridge destroyed the main water pipeline in the region, and there were no reports of casualties. The air raids came only a few hours after 4 Israelis were killed when a Palestinian attacker exploded himself near a Jewish settlement in the West Bank. The new Palestinian government, headed by the Islamic movement Hamas, described the attack as a natural response to Israeli crimes.
وعودة إلى اجتماع مجلس الوزراء في مدينة غزة حيث
As soon as the emergency meeting that was held by the Palestinian Council of Ministers was over, Minister of Media Dr. Yusuf Razzaqa condemned the assassination in a press conference. Let us listen to the statement that was issued by Yusuf Razzaqa on behalf of the Council of the Ministers.
مجلس الوزراء طبعا يتلو يوسف رزقة البيان أيضا الصادر عن مجلس الوزراء.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله.
In the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. Thanks be to God, and peace be upon his messenger. Today, Friday, March 31st, 2006, this is the official reaction of the government to the crime of assassination and its consequences. The Prime Minister, Ismail Abu Haniya, met with a number of ministers in an emergency meeting to discuss the criminal assassination of Abu Yusuf al-Koka. May God have mercy on him, and the unfortunate events that followed. The government is very concerned about this crime because it is a very dangerous matter, and the motives are suspicious. The implications of the crime are unusual, especially because it happened as the government was taking over its responsibilities. It also happened in the framework of the Israeli escalation policy against our people, which is reflected in the assassination and shelling of civilian institutions. Therefore, we decided on the following. First, we condemned the ugly criminal assassination. Second, we decided to establish an investigation committee and to investigate the crime and its implications, to uncover the criminals and to bring them to justice. Third, to stop the exchange of accusations via the media. Fourth, to withdraw armed individuals from the streets and end all tensions. Finally, the government gives its condolences to the families of the martyrs and hopes that the injured heal quickly and that our homeland remains safe and secure. And peace and blessing be upon you.
Last year at this time, the Likud was the largest faction in the Knesset and led the government. IBA's Dan Diker sat down with Yecheil Lieter, Bureau Chief of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and asked how he views the party's dismal showing in the elections.
I think it's a watershed, not only in the party's history, but in the country's history. The Likud was one of the leading parties since the country was founded. And right now it's the fourth or fifth party in the Knesset size. I think it's important to emphasize that the vote was primarily a vote on social and economic issues.
There are many Likud voters, not a few, who say that one of the other reasons, besides the economic issue, that made them very angry at Mr. Netanyahu was his decision to leave the government just a few weeks before the disengagement, as opposed to staking out a position somewhat earlier. What is your sense of that?
I disagree. I think that nobody even remembered when he resigned from the government. That had very little to do with the vote against Likud. People who, at the end of the month, saw less shekel on their stipend from the government voted against Netanyahu, voted against Likud, voted against the party they perceived as the party responsible for their financial situation. What they failed to understand is that in the short run, indeed, there were budget cuts, but in the long run, had those steps not be taken, everybody throughout the country would have suffered budget cuts over the coming years. So I think it was a somewhat short-sighted vote. But it happens very often, and I think that this sudden rise of this pensioners' party is evidence of that fact. Nobody remembers when Mr. Netanyahu resigned, and quite frankly, had he not resigned before the disengagement, he never could have waged a election campaign against further disengagements and against the Hamas victory.
How close is Netanyahu right now, after elections, to an end to his political career?
I think he's probably closest to that potentiality that he's ever been. I think, though, that he's going to weather the storm. And I think that the speech he gave last night was indicative of that. He's going to stick this out. He's a commando. He's also a political commando. And he knows how to weave and duck. He knows how to regroup. He knows how to penetrate under radar. And I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to come out over time on top. And I also think that political realities are going to play in his favor, because you do not make unilateral concessions to Hamas, and you do not reinstate transfer payments to large swaths of the population that you can't pay for. And if Olmert does do that, I think the facts are going to support Mr. Netanyahu's position, and I think the people are going to once again, at some point in the near future, vote in his favor.
Now to the elections. The Central Elections Committee last night announced final, although not yet official, results of Tuesday's elections, and there were some surprises. A tally of votes cast by IDF soldiers, hospital patients, diplomats serving abroad, and prison inmates has affected and altered the final outcome. Kadima picked up one more Knesset seat, bringing it to 29. The Likud also gained one, now giving it 12 mandates, and making it the third largest faction along with Shas, which dropped from 13 to 12. Labor remains steady with 20, but left-wing Meretz party rose by 1 seat and now has 5, while Avigdor Lieberman's Israel Beitenu dropped to 11 seats.
Lebanon's parliamentary majority leader Saad Hariri said that talks aimed at breaking a long-running political deadlock were close to resolving one of the most contentious issues, the fate of pro-Syrian President Netanyahu. Speaking to reporters following a meeting in Cairo with Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, Hariri pointed out that the national dialogue has been sensitive and lengthy because it is the first time in 2 decades that the Lebanese hold such a dialogue. The MP urged Arab countries to help improve Lebanese-Syrian relations based on agreements among Lebanese politicians on the nature of ties with Damascus. He also praised the role that of Egypt and Saudi Arabia have been playing. Regarding the UN Commission investigating the murder of former Premier Rafiq Hariri, the head of the Future Bloc in Parliament, who returned to Beirut yesterday evening, said the matter is being handled by the international community and that the Lebanese state and people have a right to know who was behind the murder. French President Jacques Chirac and U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice discussed yesterday the situation in Lebanon and France's desire to work with the international community to apply all the United Nations decisions regarding Lebanon. Presidential spokesman Jérôme Bonafont reported that Chirac considers the parliamentary results of the national dialogue as pleasing. The head of state stressed the dialogue was helping with the implementation of UN Resolution 1559. Rice's visit to Paris is part of her lightning tour to Europe to discuss the situation in the Middle East. The Lebanese military court dropped a death penalty against the head of the Palestine Liberation Organization in Lebanon, Sultan Abu Al-Ainain. The head of the PLO and Fatah commander turned himself into the Lebanese army authorities yesterday after receiving a promise from the government that the verdict would be reviewed. Lebanon had sentenced Sultan Abu Al-Ainain to death in absentia in 1999 on charges of forming an armed gang and the illegal possession of weapons. The details in this report.
In an unexpected step, the head of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Sultan Abu Al-Ainain, turned himself into Lebanese authorities yesterday after receiving promises from the government that the verdict would be reviewed. Lebanon had sentenced Abu Al-Ainain to death in absentia in 1999 on charges that he formed armed groups and carried out terrorist acts. The military court dropped the death penalty verdict against him. The court also dismissed all the charges and arrest warrants against Abu Al-Ainain. He had surrendered to authorities at the court after traveling from the refugee camp of Rashidiyya in southern Lebanon, where he had been holed up since the issuing of the sentence. The move came days after Abu Al-Ainain pledged his Fatah faction would round up weapons from outside the 12 refugee camps and organize the movement of armament inside them. On March 19, Abu Al-Ainain announced that the PLO decided to collect all the weapons they possessed, including individual arms, and put them in secure places inside the camps in accordance with the wishes of the Lebanese National Dialogue. Abu Al-Ainain told AFP that the trial against him was politically motivated, and now the problems with the Lebanese authorities were over following the creation of a committee for dialogue with the Palestinians and the visit of Lebanese ministers to Palestinian refugee camps. Lebanese leaders agreed earlier this month at the National Dialogue to disarm Palestinian militants based outside the country's 12 refugee camps and pledged to improve the living conditions of Palestinians in Lebanon. The decision also followed a visit earlier this month by ministers to Palestinian refugee camps outside the capital in a sign of easing relations between the two communities. Under an agreement after the 1987 collapse of the Cairo Accords that regulated armed Palestinian presence in Lebanon, the Lebanese army refrains from entering the refugee camps in which carrying light weapons was permitted.
في أول دراسة
In its longest inquiry ever since the end of World War II, the U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon, has disclosed a report confirming that Russian intelligence provided highly classified materials to the former regime of Saddam Hussein. The documents contain strategic plans and intelligence information regarding the U.S.-led war on Iraq. According to the Pentagon's report, the former Iraqi president Saddam Hussein downplayed the possibility of an American attack on Baghdad. Saddam was more worried about an Iraqi coup than a U.S.-led invasion. Shadi Nimmer reports.
The U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon, has confirmed that its investigation unit found the Russian government accountable for providing highly classified materials and intelligence information to the former Iraqi regime. Such confidential information was leaked to Saddam by the Russian ambassador in Baghdad. Boris Lapusov, the spokesman for the Russian Foreign Intelligence Agency's SVR, has denied the American allegation. He criticized the Pentagon's report, describing it as frantic and inaccurate. He added this was not the first time that Washington has spread baseless allegations against Russian intelligence. The Pentagon report that was titled "A Study About the Iraqi Horizon" contains 210 pages. A gag order on its publication has been partially lifted. It made references to thousands of documents that have been seized from the Iraqi files. It also contained testimonies to dozens of former Iraqi military leaders and political officials. The report disclosed a document sent from the former Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz addressed to Saddam Hussein on April 2, 2003, 2 weeks after the Iraqi war but before U.S. forces entered Baghdad. The document revealed that Russia provided intelligence information to Iraq's government, including information that coalition forces intended to isolate Baghdad from areas to its north, east, and south. And coalition forces would deploy 12,000 troops and 1,000 military vehicles in and around the city of Karbala. According to the report, the Russian ambassador in Iraq advised Saddam Hussein that the American military forces would launch a massive attack on Baghdad and neighboring areas and would isolate Iraq from Syria and Jordan. The American forces would also cause chaos in Baghdad to drive local residents out. The Russians confirmed that the attack on Baghdad would not take place before the arrival of the U.S. 4th Infantry Battalion. That military division was prevented by Turkey from launching from its territory a preemptive strike against Baghdad on April 15th. The report also revealed intelligence information about another document that was issued on March 24, 2003. In that note, Russian intelligence confirmed that it has received its highly classified materials from its sources at the Central Command of the American military forces in Qatar. The document revealed information that fed suspicions that the main U.S. invasion force coming from Kuwait was actually a diversion. Moreover, Washington planned to deploy its forces in Basra and then would head to Baghdad along the Euphrates River and thus avoiding main Iraqi cities. Despite all these highly classified materials the former Iraqi regime obtained from the Russians, Saddam was confident that the U.S. would not dare to attack him or topple his regime. He came to this conclusion thinking that France and Russia would not go along with the U.S.-led war due to their economic interests in the region. The Pentagon's report confirmed that Saddam was more worried about an internal uprising, especially at the predominantly Shiite regions, than a U.S.-led war. This explained why Saddam did not engage in combat with coalition forces, bombed Iraq's main bridges, or set oil fields on fire, as he vowed to do.
At least 70 people have been killed by an earthquake that hit western Iran. 1,000 others were injured, and somewhere between 30 to 100% of nearly 300 villages have been destroyed. The governor of Lorestan, which was hit by the earthquake, said that hospitals cannot absorb the increasing casualties and called on support from neighboring areas.
People are sad and crying over the loss of their loved ones and properties. These images are of the Iranian province of Lorestan, which was hit by a violent earthquake this morning, measuring 6 on the Richter scale, and after previously experiencing several light shock waves. Dozens of local residents and Iranian tourists were killed and hundreds of others were injured as they were celebrating the Iranian New Year. The earthquake claimed the lives of the elderly, the disabled, women, and children. In the early morning hours, the local rescue teams deployed units to the afflicted areas, sending ambulances and search dogs. They provided relief materials, including tents, blankets, and medicine to the survivors, who spent the night outside in very cold weather, which is associated with this mountainous area. The rescue units announced that the hospitals in the city received the maximum amount of patients and are not able to absorb any more injured people, requesting help from surrounding areas.
The police were deployed to the afflicted areas, and hundreds were killed and wounded. The buildings and homes were also severely damaged. The survivors have been transferred to secure areas.
The panicked residents of the afflicted areas went out to the streets, afraid of aftershock, which officials had warned about after the first earthquake, appealing for people to take all necessary precautions. This earthquake brought back memories of others that killed tens of thousands of Iranians in the past decades all throughout the country. The largest one was the Bam earthquake in 2003, which killed nearly 31,000 people. The Rudvar earthquake in 1990 also killed 35,000 people. Although the latest Lorestan earthquake was not as powerful as the previous ones, still dozens of mountain villages in the southwest of the country were destroyed, including old buildings, mud homes, and tourist sites. The destruction could have been avoided if the buildings had been retrofitted according to modern construction standards. This remains a main concern in a country where earthquakes are a common occurrence.
Iranian naval forces launched a large-scale wargame across the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman on Friday. Over 17,000 personnel of the Army, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Besieged Voluntary Forces and police took part in the exercise, which will continue until April the 6th. Various fighter jets and bombers, along with helicopters and some 1,500 vessels, are used by the operating forces. Meanwhile, a new sophisticated missile was test-fired in the drills. Commander of the IRGC Air Force, Brigadier General Hossein Salami, said it conforms to highest technological standards. He added the missile was completely designed and manufactured in Iran and successfully test-fired. Salami went on to say that it can destroy multiple targets simultaneously and effectively pass through missile defense shields, while even advanced radar systems cannot detect it. Iranian Foreign Minister Manouchehr Mottaki said on Friday that Tehran would not use oil as a weapon in the row over its nuclear program and that it was open to compromise in negotiations. Talking to reporters in Geneva on Friday, Mottaki stressed that Tehran would not give up its right to develop nuclear energy for civilian use. Later in the day, the Iranian top diplomat, in a phone talk with his Japanese counterpart, Taro Aso, emphasized that no changes have been made in Iran's nuclear policies. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter says the policies adopted by the Bush administration have taken the international community to the edge of nuclear threats. In an article in the Washington Post, Carter added, over the recent 5 years, the United States has abandoned many of the nuclear arms control agreements. Carter also said the greatest threats come from those countries which possess huge nuclear arsenals and have not signed the NPT.
The Moroccan king, Mohammed VI, asked the Consultative Council for the Western Sahara Affairs to come up with a self-autonomy proposal. Rabat will present this proposal to the UN next month after conducting wide-scale consultations with all political parties. However, the Polisarios reject this proposal outright and insist on the right to self-determination. They want to conduct their own referendum as was suggested by the UN in 2003. Observers believe that some regional and international players, especially the US, have been pressuring Morocco to reach a political solution quickly to stabilize the northern African region, which has become very important for Washington's geopolitical plans.
تهدد استقرار منطقة أضحت على قدر كبير من الأهمية بالنسبة للمخططات الاستراتيجية لواشنطن.
The Moroccan king took a big step towards resolving the Western Sahara problem by launching wide-scale consultations to come up with a vision for its self-autonomy. The Moroccan kingdom wanted to get the support of a large base of political parties and institutions. In the Ayoun province, one of the largest southern provinces, the Moroccan king called the Consultative Council for the Western Sahara Affairs to come up with suggestions on how to establish self-autonomy in the Western Sahara under the framework of Moroccan sovereignty.
Consulting with political parties have produced significant results. We call on our loyal subjects in the northern provinces to seriously consider the establishment of self-autonomy in the framework of the kingdom's sovereignty and unity.
From the perspective of Morocco, recognizing self-autonomy in the Western Sahara is a good step towards ending the conflict and strengthening relations among Arab countries in northern Africa after a long time of stagnation. By including a wide range of political parties in the political debate, including some of the ones that were distanced from policy-making decisions, will help in reaching a political solution for the conflict after hitting a dead end due to the unwillingness of both parties to compromise. Some political observers believe that the kingdom has made this proposal due to increasing international pressure and the need to find a practical solution for the dilemma of the Western Sahara under the auspices of the UN. Morocco is advocating a self-autonomy that would give the southern provinces an elected parliament, local government, and other authorities. The reactions of the U.S., which has intervened in these crises, is still unclear. Washington realizes the strategic importance of this region and wants it to be stabilized after 3 decades of conflict. Some of the countries that are concerned with the conflict have significantly changed their positions. Both Paris and Madrid support reaching a diplomatic solution by implementing the Moroccan proposal for self-autonomy in the Western Sahara, while calling for flexibility in accepting necessary amendments so it can be implemented. The response of the Polisarios, who are supported by Algeria, leads some to believe that the situation in Western Sahara may not change significantly. Although some divisions are now emerging among the Polisarios' leadership, all self-autonomy suggestions have been rejected. The Polisarios insist on self-determination and holding a referendum, as was indicated by the former American Secretary of State, James Baker. He handled the Western Sahara file for a while, but then he resigned. At the time, Baker's resignation was viewed as the end of the self-autonomy initiative, and some blamed the UN for failing to enforce any kind of resolution to this conflict.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin. This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. For a transcript of this program, to watch streaming video, or for instructions on how to receive Link TV in the United States, Visit linktv.org.